Real estate is generally a person's biggest expense. They see it as an asset and therefore are willing to leverage their purchase for a very long period of time. In recent years, people have been willing to go further and further into the debt trap with no ability to escape. Leverage is a very powerful tool, but can be absolutely ruinous when a crisis hits. This is only felt on odd occasions, so the goldfish memory of humanity will eventually bring about disastrous consequences. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. People don't want to hear information like this, but ultimately that's why you're here. It's the stuff that really hurts sometimes. I'm going to get into one of my favorite topics. I haven't talked about it in a little while, and that is what's happening in real estate. We're going to look at the biggest bubble in history right now. Real estate is something that you see different sides of. Of course, we have what's happening with retail and commercial real estate, and then of course there's residential, and you look at this further and further as we see the derivative products that have been created from what is an actual asset, like a house, like a condo, something like this, and we have taken that and gone way down the line. That's what I really want to stress in the introduction here. I want you to note that it doesn't necessarily matter what one individual does with their home. If they don't pay back, they owe the bank, their payments that they make, and so on. It is the derivative products that are interconnecting everything and everyone together. Maybe the situation that was going on in 2007 was not a problem after the financial crisis because of some changes they made. But I assure you, what we see today is actually worse, but not exactly the same. Let's begin. UBS Global Real Estate Bubble Index 2019, something that I show you as regularly as possible. This gives you the newest data in here, and of course you could scroll through, you can see everything for yourself. I'm going to touch on a few points. Here is the map, and you can actually put your mouse over to see the different years: 2017, 2018, and 2019. And this just gives you an idea of how things have progressed over the last few years. You will see specifically that Toronto is extremely overinflated, just like places like Vancouver, like Munich, like Hong Kong, and other cities. What I want to stress at this point is that, yes, you can have some areas that for certain reasons, maybe you're looking at San Diego, maybe Manhattan, where geographically there are limitations, and as a result there is always going to be a supply and demand issue as long as the economy in that particular area stays reasonably good. Okay, it depends on the situations. You're always going to have downturns, but if things again pick up, you will find that in general real estate will be in demand. Which cities have the highest risk of a housing bubble? Statista took that data from UBS and just laid it out in this chart. Munich, number 1, Toronto, Hong Kong, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, and so on. Because of what we have seen with interest rates in the last little while, we have watched the bubble continue to grow. This happens to be about Toronto. The September surge, sales in Toronto were up in almost every price range last month on a year-over-year basis, but still lagged 2016 levels. Prices, however, have climbed steadily. People today are earning on average in Toronto, the number the last time I checked was somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000 Canadian. Imagine though, the average price that people are paying for their homes is far beyond that. You can see on these charts here that this doesn't add up. Something is completely messed up when the average household is making, let's say, $70,000, $80,000, and the average home they're buying is 10 times the amount. That's for a very cheap place, probably a condominium or somewhere way out in the middle of nowhere, or it's 100 years old. This is what we're talking about today when things don't make sense. The bubble has grown past belief. You can't even dream up this anymore. It's crazy. But if you talk to people on the inside of Toronto, you know that it is a religious belief that you would go into debt as much as possible for your home, for your personal residence. Forget about investment property. We're talking about personal residence. People are putting themselves into the maximum debt. We have fraudulent paperwork that these companies are being caught with over and over again, and ultimately nothing happens. In the end, this is still going on. More than 1,000 brokers and agents sipped wine and nibbled ahi tuna hors d'oeuvre on the black tie sales launch of a luxury condo in downtown Toronto last month. So check this out. In this area, which is called Yorkville, it's a posh area of the city. They're building the 62-story skyscraper. All right, now look at this. Units range from $650,000, which I assume would be for a bachelor unit. Okay, we're talking about something I suspect would be 500 square feet, up to $2 million. That's for 1,100 square feet. Add in a parking. The parking spot for your car is $169,000. The parking spot. This is when you know you have a bubble. People cannot afford this. They're willing to live in these extremely small spaces, cubicle lifestyle, dormitory lifestyle, and yet for their vehicle, they're going to be paying $169,000 just to have a place to put it. This is the chart that corresponds to that. Prices in Canada's largest city creep upward. You could see what has happened from the financial crisis up until today. They peaked out in 2017, April 2017 approximately. Then they came down a little bit, but as soon as interest rates became favorable to people, they started going in hand over fist. We aren't seeing that exaggerated effect that was taking place back in 2017, where people would be basically bid anything at all, but the frenzy is clearly still there. This information is out of the US mall vacancy rate at an 8-year high. I always see people point to one factor or another. You're telling me, oh, it's because that store was not good. Oh, it's because they didn't have good products at that store. You can't say that if the same thing is going on in multiple countries and you are watching it take place in so many different types of business within that mall. Yeah, you might have a clothing store at one place or a different type of outlet at another place in the mall, and ultimately all of it is going down. Obviously, we have too much retail. We have a big problem today, and that really stems from the fact that so many people work in the retail industry. I had somebody comment on my previous video that I did about the store shutting down, and they were arguing that everything is totally fine in Texas. Well, I'm sure everybody in Texas feels the same way as that individual. I simply showed the data. Walmart is the #1 employer in the state. That's statistics. I didn't make it up. I literally just showed that to you. USA Today got the numbers. There are always going to be areas of the city that do better than others. There's going to be certain sectors of the economy that are going to do well when others are doing terrible. All I'm doing is grabbing data, putting it together, and showing you. $1,000 a month to live in a shed. Outrageous listing in San Diego boasts one tiny 200 square foot room, and the property realtor demands potential renters have a credit score of 650 or more. You could see it if you want. Actually, the inside of it looked relatively fixed up, but still, it's over $1,000 US for 200 square feet of shed. And then we have something that I've talked about many times before, and that's what they call co-living or collaborative living. This is a particular business that they refer to, and they'll show you pictures in this article out of the LA Times. It's called Eddy, E-D-D-Y. And you could see where this gentleman is lying. That's his room. That's his own space. And there's a curtain that separates him from all of the other people in that environment. You have a little shelf, you have your bed, and that's basically it. All right. Now, if you pay a little bit more money, you can get the upgrade, which is a double bed instead of a single bed. Here is the workspace where people can go on the computers and do what they need to. This is what it looks like. It's not exactly favorable for most people. They are spending anywhere between $800 and I think it's $1,200 depending on what you want. But essentially the cheapest one is $795 US. And that's a single bed that gives you your Wi-Fi, that gives you your kitchen supplies, bathrooms, linens, all that stuff. This is an expensive price to pay for what you're getting, but ultimately today, for a lot of people, that's all they can afford. And then we look at this. Housing market points to recession by election day. I'm not saying that necessarily. Whenever they try and time something like this, ultimately it doesn't work out. But you can see here growth in US home prices and household income. The black line is the home prices, blue line is household income. You've got a big problem. While home prices have come down somewhat in the United States, when you look at household income, ultimately it has never been able to keep up with what's happening in the general economy. Prices have risen to a level people cannot afford. But what's going on today? Something very strange. People are still buying homes. They're still taking massive mortgages. And there are a couple things here. Number one, people are moving further and further out. The urban sprawl has become absolutely intense. And I can speak for Toronto as an example. You have people who commute regularly. If you're from Toronto, you'll know what I'm talking about here. Downtown Toronto is where the jobs are. People live in a city called Barrie. Now, Barrie is by train 1.5 hour distance. Then you have to obviously get to your work and you have to get home. That's another drive. When you add that together, a person might commute one direction 2 hours, and you multiply that by 2, you're talking about 4 hours of someone's day that is occupied by travel. Now, I'm not talking about just a few people. This is a very large amount of individuals that are looking for work, so they have to go into the city, but they can't afford the city prices. And of course, maybe they don't want to live in these stacked shoe boxes, so they move out. And when you move out, you have to move further and further and further as the prices have risen in the suburbs. Average commute time reached a new record last year. This happens to be from the United States data, but this is going on basically everywhere. U.S. consumer credit tops forecast on non-revolving debt surge. We have watched credit card debt and student debt and everything else, top to bottom, rise to new records every single month. So yes, we can actually watch all of these different assets expand, but you're just blowing a bubble bigger and bigger and bigger. This is one of them. 30-year fixed mortgage. It's now sitting on average 3.57%. Now, all of that has made this much more affordable to the average person. When mortgage rates ticked up to nearly 5% in the United States, it started to really cause a slowdown. But as soon as that number began to drop, we did see more interest in the real estate market. It started to create a change in the data. And of course, I've been capturing all of that for you. There is still the trend, though, of a softening housing market in the United States. But if we see mortgage rates continue to decline, certainly people may want to expand the amount of debt that they carry on a monthly basis. They're willing to take that risk simply because it's cheap to do so, or at least they feel that way. And then we have this. Fed eases post-crisis rules for domestic and foreign banks. The US Fed unveiled a final package of rules easing capital and liquidity requirements for domestic US and foreign banks that were originally introduced following the financial crisis. As if it wasn't easy enough, I hear the stupid lie every single day that this system is stronger than it was back during those times. People are so ignorant, and I'm so tired of the stupidity, and I am not willing to accept it. I am not going to bend over and take it. That, quite frankly, is a lie. Look at this data. Look at all the others that I have talked about over the years. This is the same information essentially, but from the Financial Times, and they make one point very clear. You could see right here, Deutsche Bank expected to benefit most from the change in US regulators' stance. So this doesn't affect those big corporations, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, but in the United States, Deutsche Bank is one of those that's going to benefit greatly. Isn't that funny? A company that is basically on the verge of collapse, that needs every little bit of help it can get, right now benefiting from a rule that's changed. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, hit that thumbs up button. If you want to support me, you can watch the advertisements at the beginning of the videos. I know it's hard, I know it's inconvenient, but that's all you got to do. I never ask for money in any single way. People do support me, which I'm so grateful for. But if you just want to support without giving anything, hit that like button and watch the advertisements on the video. I do appreciate that, really do. If you want to build a business, if you want to make money, if you want to learn how to sell on Amazon, I created a 100% free e-course. It gives you the step-by-step process and how to do it. It's at theamazongps.com. If you're interested in the financial system, you want to learn about the inner workings, but there's so much confusion out there, there's so much jargon, most of it is wasting your time, then I created these 2 books which will explain everything top to bottom, A to Z. Check them out at the link in the description if you want the audiobook that's available at themoneygps.com. Hello there, are you still here at the end of the video? Well, if you are and you haven't seen this video, please spend a few minutes watching it. It is absolutely incredible to see what the Federal Reserve has done. Most people don't even know about it. I want you to watch it. Click on it and I will see you there.